Hello and welcome everyone to the Cover 2 podcast. As Nick gets that music out of the background, you're live on Facebook and on OC Rock Radio. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jared Smith.
And I'm Nick Nenad.
And Nick Nenad today is a little hoarse.
Yeah.
He had a fun weekend in New York, just got back recently.
Yeah.
A little bit later on in the show, we're going to give him a chance to talk about that trip.
Yeah.
He's got some interesting stories. He's there for WrestleMania. Yeah. He went with two of our good friends. So a little later on, we will give him a chance to, hopefully his voice will be a little better by then.
Yes.
And he can entertain us with all the fun that he had in New York.
No, my voice is a little bit, obviously, under the weather today, but I'll do my best, and still I'll be able to talk, but I think Jared's going to do a lot of the introductions.
Of course.
Like
I will be leading the way today, and we have a jam-packed show for you.
Huge.
The Virginia Cavaliers, their first national championship in their college basketball history. So we were going to get started with that, but a little later on in the show, we're going to talk about the NBA playoffs. The NBA is actually in its final day today, I believe, of games. So we will get to the playoffs. We have the NHL playoffs starting today as well. So there's some baseball news a little bit later on. And of course, like I mentioned, the breaking news that happened yesterday, Magic Johnson stepping down as the president of basketball operations for the Lakers. But that is going to be a cliffhanger because, like I said, we're going to get started with a little college basketball and Virginia. Now, they did beat Texas Tech on Monday. It was, I believe, the first ever national championship game to go into overtime.
Wow,
so that's pretty amazing. Yeah, pretty amazing right there. Virginia, once again, with another potential controversial call that went their way that helped them win a game, and this one was obviously very, very important. So I will just quickly give my thoughts, and then I do want to get Nick's thoughts about this because I know that even though he might have not watched the entire game.
Oh, no, I saw it.
Okay.
I was able to watch it on the plane, no sound.
Okay,
because
that's
my
fine.
stupid headphones weren't working. But
that's okay.
I actually was able to watch the whole game, which was awesome for a 6-hour flight.
It was a fantastic game. Now, listen,
Awesome.
The first 10 minutes of the game was very, very slow-paced. And I'm pretty sure on last week's podcast, I said, listen, people, this is going to be a defensive battle. These are the top two defensive teams, not only in the tournament, but in the country as far as basketball goes. So you have to understand that I believe in the first 10 minutes, there was only like 20 points scored combined between both teams. And that's because, listen, in that type of magnitude, you've got butterflies. You're trying to figure yourself out. You're trying to figure out the other team who you haven't played at all this entire season, right? All eyes are on you, and I think there was just somewhat of a filling out period, and it maybe took a little bit longer than some expected, but things did pick up a little bit later on, and we finally saw some of the scoring from Culver and Texas Tech, obviously with Guy and Virginia, two of the best shooters probably on each respective team, finally started to open things up and get the scoring going. But Nick, I want to get your thoughts on this game. What did you think? Do you think this game went the way that you thought? Was there anything surprising about this game, or how did you feel that this game was played?
There wasn't a lot surprising about this game. Obviously, you mentioned there was a lot of defense, and it was only 32-29 at halftime. The only thing that might have surprised me a little bit was the fact that there was a lot of threes shot and made in this game. It was almost like, because the defenses were both so good, that each team knew they couldn't really go into the box and they couldn't go into the paint and get anything done, so they were just settling for threes. And I thought maybe if teams would have done that more, either team, to be honest, that team would have ended up winning the game. In the end, they relied a lot on threes, and defensively, both teams kind of let guys wide open, like even at the end of the game for three-pointers. So that was a little strange to me. It's almost like they locked down so much on the defense of the two that the three-pointer was like wide open, and it created a whole other element of the game that I didn't expect from two defensive teams. But no, this game, when I didn't really necessarily expect it to be an instant classic because both teams are, so defensive, and they're kind of not known by a lot of the country. But it was super entertaining, and I was glad I did get to watch the game, and I was glad I did get to see all the stuff at the end, and it was real cool.
Right, you brought up a great point that I definitely wanted to mention, and for, I don't know, the first 38 minutes of the game, it was tight defense.
Oh, so much.
No one was open. Every shot was contested, was tough. Both teams were going late into the shot clock. there were not. I believe we got into the second half, and there were still no fast break points. I mean, both teams was very solid, methodical, running offense, and trying to find ways to score. There were no easy buckets in this game per se. Until the last 2 minutes, when I think things really, really started to get heavy for both teams, and it was like, oh my gosh, we can't make a mistake. And guess what? Texas Tech ended up making the first mistake, in my opinion, when they were up 3, and they, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name right now. They let Hunter of Virginia, they left him wide open in the corner. Now, the entire game, Texas Tech was not helping out at all on defense. And what I mean by helping out is they were staying on their man, right? There were no double teams. They weren't trapping anyone. If a player from Virginia was driving to the basket, it was basically just one-on-one. There was no help. They weren't trying to help because they know that Virginia has 3-point shooters and they're lethal, right? And so you can't leave those 3-point shooters open. We'd rather you give up a 2-point shot than a 3-point shot. Well, guess what? The final, basically 30 seconds of the game, Texas Tech had a whoopsie, and they left a 3-point shooter wide open in the corner. They ended up tying the game, and that is basically the main reason why this game went into overtime.
Yeah.
Texas Tech, if that defender would have stayed on the 3-point shooter, not to say that he still couldn't gotten up a shot, but there was more of a chance that Virginia player would have had to drive to the basket and go for a 2-point attempt. They still would have been down by 1, and Texas Tech more than likely would have been going to the line shooting free throws, trying to extend their lead. So this is all in hindsight, but what I'm saying is Texas Tech played such great defense for 38 minutes, and then the final few minutes of regulation, things started to collapse a little bit, and I think that's why Virginia was able to, like I said, get that open 3-point shot and get themselves back in the game. And then in overtime, it was almost like Texas Tech was a little bit deflated. It was like, oh my gosh, we're so close to winning, and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then Virginia makes that 3. The game goes into overtime, and in overtime, it was 17-9 points. Against Virginia, had 17 points. Texas Tech only scored 9, and it was really, by then you could just tell, Texas Tech had no momentum. The crowd was kind of silent, and it was almost like regulation time was Texas Tech's chance to win, and once it got to overtime, it was almost a foregone conclusion that Virginia was going to take it.
Yeah, that happens a lot when teams get into the playoffs with like the Warriors or something like that, and you go into overtime with them. You're like, oh no, we need to win in regulation. We couldn't win in overtime. It's not going to happen. But you're right. And another thing that was odd about at least regulation was Virginia, when they made that big 3 that you mentioned, what a lot of people forget is that for some reason Texas Tech went down the court and shot a super quick 3.
Right, with 3 or 4 seconds left.
There was even more than that because and then of course you had Virginia call timeout or not call timeout, and then there was 1 second on the clock. But if Texas Tech kind of develops a play, they had 22.5 seconds to go. Well, no, I had that wrong. But they had enough seconds to not have to shoot a super long 3 like they did. So I thought that was a mistake. They get lucky with the last possession. It gets blocked anyways. Ball don't lie, I guess. But, those little decisions in a championship game, in a winner-take-all game, are the things that you're going to look back on when you're the losing team, saying, why did I do that? Why didn't we just drive to the basket, try to get fouled? The game was tied. You weren't down by 3. You weren't down by 2. You could have just gone and got, and then you foul them, and then you can guarantee another possession. So I thought that was a big mistake. When they went to overtime, it was actually pretty close up until about 1:06 to go, and then there was that weird review, which I want to talk to you about, because obviously I wasn't able to hear the sound on any of this. So there was the play where the Texas Tech player was dribbling down the court. The Virginia player, what it looked like, just slapped it out of his hand out of bounds. They ended up calling it Virginia ball, but I guess it skinned the centimeter of skin and hair on his hand.
He must have not shaved his hand recently.
Yeah, so
he must have had a lot of hair.
Explain to me and the people that don't know what we're talking about why that play was overturned and why they even reviewed it in the first place, because it just looked like it was tapped out.
Right. So, see, here is the thing with reviews, right? And
it's ended up kind of taking possession to Virginia, and they ended up just not losing after that, too.
It did. So, obviously, in years past, before we had instant replay and reviews, people would say we need to get calls right. We need to get everything right. Whether it takes time, 30 seconds, whether it takes a minute, 2 minutes, we have to get the calls on the field or on the court in this instance correct. So obviously within 2 minutes of the end of the half, and I believe the entire overtime period, referees are allowed to go to the monitor to check for who touched the ball last or situations like that. Obviously, with that being such a pivotal play, the referees are going to want to go and check it. No problem at all, right? I'm sitting there thinking, this is Texas Tech ball.
100%.
No big deal. I mean, you don't even have to listen to the commentary to obviously, you can just watch it and say, no big deal. Texas Tech's going to get it. This is going to take 10 seconds. Let's move on. All of a sudden, you see the referees and they still have the headset on and they're still looking at the monitor like a minute later, and you're like, wait a minute, man. What do these guys? Do they have another angle that the viewers at home do not have? Because unless you have like a microscope and you're able to see the fine little hairline that the ball touched from the Texas Tech player, I thought that call was. Listen, as much I want calls to be made correctly, of course, I feel that there was not. See, there has to be, and the thing was. On the court, before the referee blew the whistle to actually go review the play, it was Texas Tech ball.
Yeah.
They called it
Texas
Tech.
They had to change the call.
Right. So which means you have to have indisputable evidence, inconclusive evidence that it was changed or that, something was different from on the court in live action. I do not feel that there was like inconclusive evidence that Texas Tech player did in fact touch the ball last. You can clearly see the Virginia defender knocking the ball away. And you kind of see the Texas Tech player's hand very close to the ball. But like I said, in my opinion, there's no inconclusive evidence that he actually touched it. And the fact that on the court it was called Texas Tech ball, and for them to change that call, I think that was once again, another call that went Virginia's way. But I don't feel that call should have been made. Now, there's no guarantee that Texas Tech would have won the game, obviously. We don't know.
Yeah.
But, like you mentioned, when Virginia got that ball, at that point, Texas Tech almost had to start fouling, and it was like, okay, then you're really just playing from behind. If Texas Tech would have had the ball right there, they were already on their side of the court. So they didn't even have to waste time dribbling the ball off the court. They could have just set up a shot and gone for I believe it would have been at least a tie.
It was 75-73 Virginia at this point with a minute to go. So you had a possession and even the ability to play defense and get the ball back. So no matter what would have happened for Virginia, let's say if Texas Tech had scored on this possession, Texas Tech would have got the ball back. Again, it would have had a chance to tie, win, do whatever. And the problem with me with this review is, number one, it changed the game completely, because it gave Virginia the ball. But when you look at the replay, and I get that it likely went off the guy's hand, and if you have the ability to go in and look at a replay so closely you actually can see it go off his hand, my problem is this: the Virginia player knocked it out of his hand. It's off Virginia. It's not off, like if you knock a ball out of someone's hand and it like nicks their pinky, it's still off Virginia, in my opinion. Like, they're knocking it out of the guy's hand in an attempt to, like, lose possession. Did Virginia really think that ball was going to stay in back? Like, it just...
See that?
To me, it's a weird, like, little thing. It was so close that it's almost like, why were we even reviewing it in the first place? Just give Texas Tech the ball.
Well, I disagree with you there. Because of the magnitude of this game, this is a national championship game. And this game is in overtime, like I mentioned, the first national championship overtime game ever. If you're dribbling the ball and I knock the ball off your hand and it hits your knee or your foot and then goes out of bounds, it's my ball. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it went off your foot last. I understand what you're saying about like the fine semantics. Uh-huh. If there was like a legit angle and inconclusive evidence that the ball actually touched the Texas Tech player's pinky or any part of his hand, then yes, it outright should have been Virginia's ball. Uh-huh. What I'm saying is I don't feel that in any of the angles that were shown, at least to the viewers, none of the angles clearly showed that the ball touched the Texas Tech player's hand last. You can clearly see the Virginia player coming in, but I just don't see where it clearly showed Texas Tech touching the ball last. So for me, if it had shown that, if it had gone off his palm, any part of his body part, then yes, it should have been Virginia's ball. I just don't know, who knows? Maybe the referees had a different angle that they weren't
That's
showing the
always
viewership.
true.
That's the only thing I can think of as to why they would have made that call in this situation.
No, yeah, and I get what you're saying. It was weird to me that the review even happened, because I didn't see a reason why. There should have been a call, because it just looked like he tapped it out of bounds. And then, of course, what you're saying is there ended up not being, at least to the viewer, any conclusive evidence, much like the call earlier in the game where they had a ball that was supposedly off a guy's hand, stuff like that, and they just kept that call the same.
Right.
So I didn't understand why they changed this one when they didn't change the other one. And it's just weird because, like you're saying, this is the biggest moment of the game. And they end up changing it. Obviously, Texas Tech needs to play defense, and they don't need to let Ty Jerome go wide open for a layup, right? Like, that doesn't need to happen either. But it's just weird to me that we're still almost always in these big games, whether it be a conference championship game, maybe between the Saints and the Rams, or a Super Bowl, or a World Series, or a national championship game, we're still always talking about a bad call or something like that. And I hate to have to talk about it, because it really shouldn't be a part of the game. And I almost think that, like, if we're going to replay review, as long as you just follow the rules that you state, we're all good. In my opinion, it didn't have visual evidence to say that it was off Texas Tech. And maybe they had a different view, but for us at home, maybe we should get to just see what the referees are seeing. Maybe that's the way to do it, so that fans aren't, wondering the entire time, oh, was it really out on Texas Tech? You know what I'm saying? So maybe that's the difference we need to do. But, I mean, it was a great game overall. We don't want to make it seem like a call. I'm not trying to make it seem like a call changed the whole game, because obviously it didn't. Texas Tech still needs to play defense and stuff like that. But it does suck that almost every single time when we're coming back here, one of the big games has a weird controversial play.
Right.
So it is a little weird. But so I did want to get into kind of the... What did you think about Virginia, this story about them going from losing to a 16 seed to now winning the championship? What does that show about this team, that they're able to take the worst loss maybe in college basketball history and turn that into a championship in the best, maybe one of the best college basketball games ever?
Oh, listen, there's already a 30 for 30 like being ready, set to make for this. In 10 years, a fantastic 30 for 30 will be out for this. Last year, obviously, for those who don't know, Virginia, the overall number one seed in the March Madness tournament when it began, loses to a 16 seed for the first time in the history of March Madness, right? Just the worst breakdown a team can have, coming in as the number one overall seed, and you lose immediately like that. Embarrassment. I'm not even sure another word to use besides that. Just a complete shock, right, by many. And then Virginia comes back this year, still number one seed, not the overall number one seed that went to Duke, but still a number one seed. And in their first game this year, they're down by double digits at half. And it's almost kind of like, oh my gosh.
Against another 16 seed.
It's almost like deja vu. This is going to happen again. Obviously, Virginia, got themselves in check. They went on to win that game. But they had some close calls, right? And listen, Virginia is the team that plays. It's almost like when Nick and I talk about football, it's like you want a team that usually goes to the championship. They're a great defensive team. They don't turn the ball over. They run the ball a lot. You know what I mean? They're just very efficient. And I feel that's what this Virginia team is all about from a basketball perspective. They're very efficient. They are the number one overall rated defensive team in the country. They have 3-point shooters. They don't turn the ball over. Now, they're not flashy. They're not a fast break team. They don't really go up and down and throw up lobs. But what they do is they run clock. They know how to run their offense. Yeah, it might be a slower pace type of game. And in today's basketball, where they're talking about college or professional, you're starting to see a lot more up and down pace in games going up to 100 points and more. Virginia is really around like the 65, 70 mark point for points per game. Mm-hmm. They're methodical, and it's not very fun, but they win, obviously. So the fact that this team was able to persevere. Another thing about this team is they don't necessarily always get the number one recruits. They're not Duke. They're not North Carolina. They're not Kansas. Duke obviously this year had the top 3 recruits in all of high school, and guess what? Duke didn't make it to the national championship game, right? Virginia, almost all of their players came back from last year's team. So they not only had experience on their side, but they also had that huge chip on their shoulder saying, hey, we lost last year and we were embarrassed. We were an embarrassment. Yeah. We're not going to do that same thing this year. We're going to come out and show people that was a fluke and that won't happen again. Obviously, a few calls ended up going their way that helped them. Yep. But in all fairness and in all seriousness, this team is obviously a legit basketball team, and especially coming out of the ACC, that, in my opinion, was the strongest basketball conference this year. They had 8 or 9 teams that made it to the tournament. Yeah. 3 number 1 seeds with not only Virginia, but Duke and North Carolina as well.
And they were all legitimate number 1 seeds.
Exactly. There was no question, no argument at all about that. So for this Virginia team to come back from the struggles that they had last year just shows perseverance. It shows that they have great leadership, not only from their coaching staff and their head coach, but from their players. And they have DeAndre Hunter, who many people think will be the 3rd or 4th overall pick. You have Guy, who's a great 3-point shooter. There's just a lot of strong leadership on this team, and I think that showed throughout the season with all the adversity and everything that they had to go through. So, at the end of the day, congratulations to Virginia. Many people will have put an asterisk next to it because of those calls or non-calls that went their way. But like I said, the fact that they were able to come back is simply amazing.
No, it was great. And you mentioned how close these scores were. Because obviously you talk about they were down double digits to a 16 seed again. They play a tough Oklahoma team. And then here were the scores from the Sweet 16 on. 53-49, 80-75, 63-62, and then 85-77 in overtime.
Wow.
There's not really much harder route to the championship. I know they didn't maybe play the best teams ever, but that, give them credit. I don't even think there should be an asterisk put on the game or whatever, but give Virginia credit. What a great year and a great job by those guys, because to be honest, even if I was the number 1 overall pick and I lose to a 16 seed, I'm coming back. All right? There's no way.
Yeah, you can't go out like that.
Yeah, you at least got to get to the Sweet 16 the next year. You can't lose like that. So credit these guys. Obviously, we talk all the time in college basketball about the one and dones, and it's nice always, to be honest, to see non-1 and 1 teams win the championship, because it's that's old school basketball. That's the way it's supposed to be played. And so it was good. Now let's jump to Texas Tech. Texas Tech, obviously, they kind of surprised people last year. I forget exactly which round they got to, but they got really far. And then this year, they win a share of the Big 12. They have a great head coach. They have a great defense. I personally think Texas Tech is here to stay. Now, if they lose their head coach, which happens sometimes at non-traditionally huge programs, that could change things. But I think as long as they have their head coach, and as long as they have this defensive strategy, they're always going to be in the tournament, and they're always going to have a chance to be up there, win the Big 12, and stuff like that. I really like this Texas Tech team, too, and kind of wish I would have bet on them further in this tournament, and I kind of had them losing early just based on stupid ways I did my bracket. But I really like this Texas Tech team the whole year, and I wasn't surprised they made the championship.
Right, no, I wasn't surprised either. The thing is, they were a number 3 seed, okay?
Yeah,
it's
they
not
were
like
a great
this team was like a number 10 or 11 seed and there's some Cinderella story. Right? This is
they
Texas
technically
Tech.
Could be the number 9 team in the nation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is Texas Tech right here, who, once again, like I said, another top defensive team. I believe they were top 5 statistically in all of college basketball. So maybe not as good as Virginia, but that's what they still hung their hat on. Jarrett Culver, arguably their best player, will be a first-round draft pick. He is leaving. So that's going to be a huge blow for this Texas Tech team, because for as great of a defensive team as a whole as they are, you still need some offensive weapons, especially when you have lower-scoring games like that, to kind of, hey, if we need a bucket, this is our guy that we can lean on that can just go and get a bucket. We don't necessarily need to draw up an offensive play, and that's what Jarrett Culver was for this team. So they will have to reload with that. The fact that you get the national championship, that right there is going to help your recruiting in the next couple of years. So hopefully this team can continue to rebuild. And you're right, as long as their head coach is there and he continues with their defensive strategies, I don't think this team is going anywhere.
Yeah.
This team will, at worst, in my opinion, be a 5 seed in next year's tournament. They do have Mooney and Moretti, and I believe Owens, who are for sure coming back next year. Don't quote me on that, but I'm
yeah,
almost certain that they are coming back.
Could change, but
and those are 3 of their 5 starters that would potentially be coming back next year. So you add, a couple more, maybe 4-star recruits or even a potential 5-star recruit after this national championship game, and I think this team kind of picks up right back where they lost. And listen, like I mentioned, the fact that in regulation this team was so close to winning, and if they would have just tightened up their defense a little bit more and not given up that wide open 3, there's a good chance right now that we're talking about Texas Tech winning the national championship. So I think this team also has a chip on their shoulder. Not as much as Virginia did this year, but going into next year, Texas Tech will use this as fuel to come back and try to reload. And as of right now, I've got to put them in the top 10, way too early college basketball rankings. And this team will come back strong.
No, totally. And just to give them a little clout going into this tournament, they actually, in my opinion, had an obviously more tough road to get to this championship than Virginia did. They beat Northern Kentucky in the first round game. They play a tough Buffalo team and beat them by 20. They beat Michigan by 19. They beat Gonzaga, who was the number 1 seed. They beat Michigan State by 10. And then they go in and lose to Virginia. But like that to me just shows you how impressive this team really was, why they deserve to be in the championship. And like you're saying, why if they just guard a guy at the 3-point line, they probably win the national championship. Again, it's a couple things they did wrong in the end. That could be the fact that they're a brand new team to this kind of successful basketball. At least we didn't think Texas Tech was a very good college basketball team 3 years ago. And now they're in the national championship. So they'll get recruits. They'll do better. And, I'm looking forward to seeing them. And they're probably an early favorite to win the Big 12 again. So.
Right. That's great. So that is going to wrap up our college basketball segment and more than likely most of our college basketball talk.
Yeah. We will have something. We are going to talk about one more thing a little bit later in Do You Care? So stay tuned for that. But as far as the basketball season goes, we're done with it.
Right, exactly. Little tease. So we're going to our first break of the show. So stick with us. It'll be a short one, about 4 minutes or so. On the other side, breaking news that Magic
and there's
Johnson,
more news coming out right now, like live on our show.
As we speak. So we have a ton to unravel for you guys. All you need to know, Magic Johnson no longer the president of basketball operations. He is stepping down from that role. We have a lot to talk about, so stick with us. We'll be right back on the other side of this break with Lakers Talk.
So today, I'm going to step down as the president. And I think her and I have such an amazing relationship. And I think that she gave me full power to do what I wanted to do.
So in one of Magic Johnson's first interviews or conferences last night, he was basically saying I didn't want to have to make. He's like, if I would have stayed in this position, I would have had to affect someone's life tomorrow.
Yeah.
Essentially, Luke Walton.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
But he didn't actually say his name. He just said I would have had to affect someone's life tomorrow, and I didn't want to do that. It's not fun for me. I didn't want that to come between myself and Jeannie. And obviously, Jeannie is very, very high on Luke.
But I think that with her and I want to always preserve our relationship and love her. And then I think that I had more fun when I was able to be the big brother and ambassador to everybody.
Welcome back to the Cover 2 podcast, everyone. Once again, I'm Jared Smith.
And I'm Nick Nina.
And we are live on OC Rock Radio and Facebook Live. If you're on Facebook Live right now, sorry about that delay. We had some technical difficulties.
Yeah.
But we got things back up and running right now.
Too, yeah.
If you did not see the end of that first segment or if there's anything wrong, we finished up with college basketball, talking about the Virginia Cavaliers winning their first ever national championship. And what that meant for college basketball moving forward. And now it is on to the biggest story of all right now, as Magic Johnson has stepped down as the president of basketball operations for the Los Angeles Lakers. A shocking move where he did not let anyone know. He did not let current owner Jeannie Buss. He did not let general manager Rob Pelinka know. He did not let head coach Luke Walton know. He didn't even let LeBron James know. So a lot to dive into right now. And let's get started. Nick, I want to get your quick initial reactions of what happened.
I mean, just totally blindsided, to be honest. I think the Facebook Live is off.
Yeah, we'll have to keep going.
So if you're listening on OC Rock Radio, Facebook Live is down. So we're gonna have to fix that in a second. But for me, it totally blindsided me. And then I started finding out the details of why he was quitting and how it went down, how the fact that he didn't tell Jeanie Buss. And I'm just surprised that Magic would kind of just quit on the Lakers like this and not understand that he was in such a big position with this team that you can't just quit when the going gets tough. I know this season sucked, and I know we've made fun of them when we literally buried them on this podcast, but that doesn't mean that you need to step down and say all the things. Just say you're stepping down. Just say, I'm stepping down because obviously things didn't go as planned. We didn't have the year we wanted, and I feel like I might be a distraction. Don't come out and say, I'm afraid to tell Jeanie Buss to fire Luke Walton. I want to text players. I want to fraternize. I'm not having any fun anymore. That makes you look really bad, Magic, and to Lakers fans and to people in LA that don't see this kind of weirdness go on a lot with teams, it's a complete shock to me that this is going down. I don't know what this means for Rob Pelinka. I probably know what it means for Luke Walton. But this Lakers team is in shambles right now. I just don't know what's going to happen with this LeBron era. And it just seems like, early June last year, it was so much happiness that LeBron was coming to LA. And now it's like, what the hell's going to happen? So those are my thoughts on it initially, that I don't know what's going on with the Lakers, and I'm not down for it either. Like, I'm not down to support this just craziness. And there needs to be, whether they hire just a basketball guy and stop hiring these big stars to be their guys. Maybe that's what needs to happen, and maybe Jeanie Buss possibly needs to step down too.
See, there's so much to go into. I really don't even know where to begin with this, and I guess I will start with this because this is actually what happened. So Magic Johnson decided to step down, and like I mentioned, he did not tell Jeanie Buss, he did not tell Rob Pelinka, he did not tell anyone probably other than his own wife and kids, because he didn't want anyone knowing. I am of the assumption, and I do not know this obviously, I'm not privy to this type of information, but following the Lakers as much as I do, it feels like Magic Johnson, as he was driving to the arena for the game yesterday, decided, now he not that all out in the blue, but decided, you know what, something just isn't right, and I'm just going to do this right now. Now, I think he had been contemplating this for a few weeks, and he had a meeting on Saturday with kind of the whole brass, Rob Pelinka, Jeanie Buss, some other top brass of the Lakers organization, to go over things. He also had another private meeting on Monday. So whether he was throwing out little subtle hints or, the relationship that Buss and Magic Johnson have, I feel like is so strong that I think he had to have, in some type of way, given her some notion or something to say, hey, listen, things aren't necessarily going right, and I'm thinking about doing this, right? Maybe he didn't obviously let her know that this is what I'm going to do, but he had to have given them some type of notice. This just doesn't feel like the guy that would just blow people off and say, I'm doing this for no reason. I'm doing it for me. He's come out and said, I'm doing this because I think this is the right thing for this organization right now. And even though it seems like it's an abrupt time, that he does not want his relationship between Jeanie Buss and or Rob Pelinka and or Luke Walton to fail because of business. So he is choosing to step aside right now, and unfortunately at an awkward, weird time when Dwayne Wade is playing his last home game, when Dirk Nowitzki is playing his last home game, and both of those huge, amazing stories get overshadowed by this. So I think that's kind of another reason why people are looking at this wrong way. Like, really, Magic, you kind of have to steal the show, steal the spotlight. Mm-hmm. You can't do this next week. When things are kind of died down and everyone's just talking about the playoffs and the first round. So I feel like that's one thing. Here's another thing to keep in mind, and this is why I'm shocked that this happened in this moment. I'm not shocked that Magic Johnson is actually stepping down.
Same with me.
And I'll tell you why. the moment Magic Johnson took this basketball of operations job, if you know anything about basketball, especially as a Lakers fan, or you cover the Lakers at all, you have to realize that Magic Johnson was never going to be the guy that was going to go out on scouting trips all the time and go out on recruitment trips necessarily and be there for the day-to-day operations. Magic Johnson is more or less the ambassador. He just has the title of president of operations, right? He is the one that lures in, is supposed to lure in the big free agents like Anthony Davis and Kawhi Leonard and all those types of guys. He's supposed to be there as like the icing on the cake, the name on the brand, right? Rob Pelinka was brought in as the actual day-to-day, everyday type of manager. Well, guess what? Unfortunately, he's never had an actual general manager title in his career. Yeah. Now, he played basketball at Michigan. He played during the Fab 5 days with Jalen Rose and Chris Webber. And then he went on to be a very elite agent, obviously one of Kobe Bryant's agents, and that is basically his ties with the Lakers. So really, this goes to Kobe Bryant and the fact that Kobe, I'm sure, had a hand in getting Rob Pelinka into the spot.
Of course.
So, in reality, and I think to kind of not sum this up, but I think a big thing is this has to go somewhat on Jeannie Buss and whoever in the Lakers organization made the decision to bring on Rob Pelinka, because Rob Pelinka was not brought on by Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson was, in a way, somewhat forced to work with Rob Pelinka, right? So I'm not trying to say Rob Pelinka is a bad guy. I'm sure he's a great guy, and he was obviously a great agent, and he played basketball in his career. But he's never been a GM before. So the fact that Magic Johnson is dealing with a rookie general manager who's supposed to be dealing with all the day-to-day operations, I feel like it was almost set up for disaster, and especially in the fact that, the Lakers could not get Anthony Davis. All of that was all of the information and all the talks that were supposed to be kept quiet came out, and that blew up in the Lakers' face. They weren't able to get Kawhi Leonard. And it's almost looking like right now, I wouldn't think I would ever have to say this, as my 28 years as a Laker fan, that the Los Angeles Clippers seem to own LA right now. And I don't think that's a question.
No, it's not even like, because obviously they're in the playoffs and the Lakers aren't. So that there's that thing. But it just seems like their management just knows what they're doing more. Like Steve Ballmer, who's a Microsoft guy that really wasn't even in basketball, seems to be knowing what he's doing. He hired Jerry West, and he kept Doc Rivers, and he didn't fire Doc Rivers when times went tough. You know what I'm saying? It's just, I think you're right about that, and I don't want to harp too much on the Clippers because obviously they might be playing the Warriors in this first round because of just horrible losses, including to this Lakers team that's been super disappointing. I haven't been able to obviously watch any of the games because I've been so busy this past weekend, but that's not, we can get into that later maybe. But, that's just insane to say, though, that the Clippers are in a better position right now overall, I think, without question, than the Lakers are, and the Lakers have LeBron James. Jared, I really liked what you said a second ago, too, and I wanted to read 2 tweets by Adrian Wojnarowski, who obviously has a lot of clout in the league, probably knows this situation more than we do since he's, on the front lines, and he said these 2 things. He said, since taking over as president of the Lakers, Magic Johnson never fully committed to the job. Often he was traveling and away from the team. His office hours were limited. He didn't do a lot of scouting. Running an NBA team takes tremendous commitment of time and energy. Lakers coaching staff fully expected to be fired in hours after the final game of the season. They had believed they were gone for months. Now, Magic quits in public, saying he's too scared to tell Jeannie Buss face-to-face. What an embarrassing episode for a historic franchise.
Okay, see that right there is playing into my hands of what I exactly said.
No, that's exactly
it. The moment the Lakers hired Magic Johnson, they had to realize that Magic Johnson was not going to be there for the day-to-day
in
stuff.
October, he's with the Dodgers in the playoffs.
He's with the Dodgers. He has other commitments going on. Like he said, he wants to be able to work with other players. He said in one of his interviews late last night, he got a call from Serena Williams, who wants him to come and mentor her for a business opportunity.
That's great.
The type of guy that he is, he wants to be able to go do those things. Now, obviously, if something happens with the Lakers that's more pressing, he needs to be there for a big pressing issue if it's getting a star free agent or something like that. But the Lakers had to know that Magic was not going to be there all the time, right?
Yeah.
Jeannie Buss literally handed him the keys to the castle and said, make your own hours, come and go as you please, fire and hire who you want. As long as we are winning and as long as we have superstars on our team, I do not care. So, with that being said, like I said, this all comes down to why would the Lakers then go out and hire a person to be their general manager who has never, ever been in that position before?
Doesn't make any sense.
Right? You have to, if you're going to hire Magic Johnson, you then have to, in my opinion, bring in someone who has had some type of experience and has had some type of success. Not only experience, but some success with winning and building a team. That person has to be in there every single day. Now, I do want to preface this by saying this. From listening to multiple different reporters, there have been multiple sources who have said that Rob Pelinka in the last month or so, just around the practice facilities and the offices, has quote-unquote been joking around asking, hey, where's Magic? Has anyone seen Magic?
Oh, wow.
Haven't seen Magic in the office for a while,
man,
right?
Dude.
So
This is so bad.
I think Magic maybe got word of that, and you know what? He was probably tired of all the rumblings and all of this stuff. So listen, like I said, there is so much information and so much new news that's constantly coming out about this, seeing as this just happened, I don't know, less than almost 12 hours ago.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, in the end, the fact that this organization hired Rob Pelinka, I think that is one of the main reasons why Magic Johnson is now stepping down, and why is he choosing to step down right now? Because whether it's the rumors, whether it's people talking behind his back, I think Magic Johnson at the end of the day just said, I don't want to deal with this, right? Now
he quit. Yeah.
Right. He in a sense quit. And I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying I think that's what his thinking was. I'm not having fun. I want to be able to go and mentor Ben Simmons. I want to be able to go and mentor Serena Williams. He said he's still going to be an ambassador for the Lakers, not with an actual title, but he said if Jeannie Buss ever needs me, I will be there. If LeBron James ever needs me, I will be there, which is all fine and dandy.
Yeah.
But he wants to go have fun. He wants to free up his time to do what he wants and not necessarily be on Lakers time. So I get it from that standpoint. I'm just not a fan of how he went about this, and I feel like this could have been handled in a much better way.
Yeah, I mean, and you talked about Rob Pelinka, and I don't know why I didn't keep these tweets stored, but I saw stories about how Pelinka also was he had told, I forget who he told was going to I think he told a player that has been traded in the last 1 or 2 years that they were creating a role for him, buy a house here in California, and then they traded him 2 days later. So that's why you don't hire a guy that doesn't know essentially what he's doing to the GM position, because you're affecting guys' lives. Magic's last trade was Zubac for Mike Muscala.
Yeah, how'd that turn out?
Zubac starting for the Clippers, on a playoff team. It's just, this whole thing doesn't make any sense.
Listen, Rob Pelinka, at the end of the day, he's a seller. He's an agent.
He
represents players. He tries to get players max dollars so that he can make a commission, right? I'm not saying that eventually he can't be a good general manager, but right now, this is his rookie year, and look at all the roller coaster rides that he's had to go on, right?
Gosh.
He is not used to being a buyer. He's not used to being a guy that goes out and actually scouts for a specific team and tries to recruit Kawhi Leonard and Anthony Davis to come and join a team. That's not what he is used to doing. So I'm not trying to sit here and bash on him. I'm just saying he does not have the experience that one would need, you would think, to be the general manager of the Los Angeles Lakers, the most profitable professional basketball team in all the land. So that is kind of where my concern is with this. Not to say that overshadows Magic Johnson actually stepping down, because we have to remember at the end of the day, this was his choice and all of his doing. And like we mentioned also, he came out and said, I did not tell anyone, especially Jeannie Buss, because he says if I would have had a meeting with Jeannie Buss, he's like, she would have talked me into staying. We would have cried about it, and I would have stayed, and we wouldn't be having this meeting right now. At the end of the day, his heart was not in it, and he didn't want to do it. So he wanted to leave on his own terms and not get sucked back in. And that's where we stand as of right now.
Yeah, and now, so there's no president of basketball operations. Nobody likes the GM. Nobody trusts the coach. And the roster is very in flux. And then there was a report, it was either earlier yesterday or the day before that said that all three of the top big stars likely are not going to come to the Lakers unless it's like their third or fourth choice. The Lakers are screwed. And they have a young core that a lot of people don't think, including me, is enough to win a championship with. So they need to, in my opinion, they need to go in and hire basketball guys. No more, there's no Showtime. Okay, Magic Johnson doesn't play for the team anymore. The celebrities they come out, but it's not the same thing. The Showtime's over. It's a LeBron-led team that can win it. They can get to a championship because you have LeBron. But you just need to hire basketball guys to build the roster smartly around such a big contract and stuff like that, and not go sign Lance Stevenson and JaVale McGee and all these guys that just they're complementary players on teams that win championships. I mean, take JaVale McGee, for example. He won the championship with the Warriors. He was not the reason the Warriors won the championship. The reason was Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Kevin Durant, right? The reason the Cleveland Cavaliers won the championship was not because of Kyle Korver. It was because of LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. So, you need to build a basketball team around LeBron James, not a Showtime team. Because, yeah, I guess it was fun seeing Lance Stevenson break guys' ankles, but you're 10 games out of the playoffs. So how much fun is it? And that's why I get so annoyed by basketball fans sometimes. It seems like they care about dunks and ankle breakers more than your team actually making the playoffs. And it's like, come April time, especially this year when the two hockey teams here in Southern California just were horrible. I want to see some playoff basketball. And now there's one team, and the Clippers might get bounced in the first round because they're going to play the Warriors. So it's like this whole season could have been really entertaining for the Lakers, and just because of the way they built up their upper management, the way they built the roster, it's super disappointing.
Right. As I was driving into the studio this morning, I typically always listen to ESPN 710,
which is
LA
like
radio.
The Lakers radio station.
Exactly, and they played a clip from right before Magic, or it was either right before or right after Magic Johnson officially got hired by the Lakers, and Dan Le Batard, a very well-known reporter in Miami, he had some interesting things to say, basically going against the Lakers and Magic Johnson, saying, hey, listen, everyone, I'm not saying it isn't going to work, but, like, pump the brakes. Obviously, everyone was super excited, especially if you're a Laker fan. It was like, oh, my gosh, we've got Magic Johnson back officially, not necessarily as just the ambassador. He's really here. And Dan Le Batard was saying, he basically brought up Magic Johnson's history since he retired from playing, saying Magic Johnson, because he is such an idol and an icon, and because of his basketball days winning championships, he's had many opportunities that he probably necessarily didn't deserve, saying he had broadcasting opportunities which he failed, saying he had a head coaching opportunity which he failed after like less than 16 games. Yeah. He's had other opportunities, in the basketball world per se, not as a player, but as a coach or in the front office, that he has failed. So Dan Le Batard was basically bringing up instances where Magic Johnson, obviously he's very successful, making money with Starbucks and obviously owning a portion of the Dodgers. But when it comes to basketball, saying that he has not been successful. And that is true in a sense, but you also have to look at it this way. Where is the Lakers team at now, roster-wise, as opposed to where were they before Magic Johnson came?
Well, they have LeBron James, so obviously they're better. But LeBron brings on $40+ million, then you have to build around him. And I just think there was, you look at what D'Angelo Russell has done since they gave away him, and they pick Lonzo Ball over. They essentially pick Lonzo Ball over D'Angelo Russell. And right now, Lonzo Ball, although I think he's a great player, has been very injury prone, and now D'Angelo Russell has led a NBA team to the playoffs that literally hasn't had a draft pick in like 4 years. So, and then you look at Julius Randle, and Julius Randle's numbers, you could say were very, very good and better than a lot of the guys on the current team and stuff like that. And they got lucky with Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance Jr. and Kyle Kuzma drafting late. So yes, they actually have a better team, but that better team was like the worst team in the league. So you're not improving that. Like, I'm not going to give you credit for winning 10 more games. I'll give you credit when you're a legitimate championship contender, because that's why you hire and fire new management. You don't hire a new coach going, you know what? I want 8 more wins from you guys, and then that's it, and we're signing you to a 10-year extension. And that's all you have to do. You just have to win 8 more games from the 20 that we won last year, and as long as you just keep improving by 1 game, we'll keep high. No, you hire people to eventually win a championship, right? Unless you're completely rebuilding and stuff like that, and then it's a little different. But or in the Lakers' case with the Byron Scott thing, probably the better choice with Kobe Bryant to not ruin that. And I think Lakers fans understand that last year with Kobe was about Kobe, and we'll take that as an off year. But yeah, I just, you need to hire people that actually want to win a championship and don't just want to try to bring stars over and want to, kind of pump up their own ego in a way.
So, 2 things. I agree with you in the fact that, yes, winning an extra 10 games with LeBron James means nothing.
No.
You get LeBron James,
you won like 20.
You need to make the playoffs and at least make it to the Western Conference Finals, or this first season is a failure, which it was a major failure, no question.
One of the worst ever.
Where I disagree with you, and I know that you said that this team is technically better than they were before Magic Johnson came on, but I'm actually looking at it as the optimist, to where, yes, they have LeBron James on the team, and he's taking up a big chunk of their payroll right now. They still have an opportunity, as of right now, with the roster that they have, to get another max NBA player, whether that's a Kawhi Leonard or Anthony Davis. Now, whether that be a trade or just a sign, however they can do it, they have the opportunity right now to pick up another player. You also have a lot of young talent. You have Kyle Kuzma, you have Lonzo Ball, you have Josh Hart, you have Brandon Ingram. Now, we don't necessarily know the status of Brandon Ingram's health with his blood clot issues. We're hoping that, obviously, first and foremost, that he gets himself healthy, and second of all, that he can come back to the basketball court. So the combination of LeBron James, even though he's getting a little longer in the tooth or older in the tooth, LeBron James with that young talent that I just mentioned, with the cap space, I'm looking at it as this Lakers team has an opportunity to make some moves. Whether you want to keep the young core with LeBron and add a superstar, or whether you want to add a superstar, trade a couple of those pieces and get a third superstar and try to be the next Warriors team, right? I think this team has, like I said, opportunities to be great in the next year or two, because in reality, that's all LeBron James really has left.
Yeah.
Right? So you're trying to win now. So whoever the next president of basketball operations is, whoever the next head coach is, if Luke Walton gets fired, I think you have to go into it looking as okay, we have an opportunity to do something special here. We just have to make the right moves, and we have to add the right pieces. So I think this team can still be successful, and I think that they have pieces to build on. It's just, will they make those right moves? Do they have the right type of connections? Now, you don't necessarily have Magic Johnson in the office. Now, as of today, it's on Rob Pelinka to go out and scout and do everything necessary. Not only scout these college athletes coming into the NBA next year, but go out and try to wine and dine Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah.
Try to somehow talk to the Pelicans. Try to somehow get the Pelicans to talk to you again, so that you can try to work out a trade for Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving. You know what I mean? This is, as of right now, all on Rob Pelinka until they bring in someone else as president of basketball operations to help out with that.
Yeah, it's almost like this. This is at least what I think, and tell me if you agree with me on this. The Lakers, I almost hope that whoever they hire for president, whoever they hire for GM, whoever they hire for head coach, almost has no connection to the Lakers. Because it's like, I almost want to just start over and stop like with the whole hometown thing. Because Steve Kerr never played for the Golden State Warriors, right? And he's obviously a successful coach. Kevin Durant didn't come from the Bay Area. He went over to the war. Like, stop with this, like, everyone has to be from L.A., Lonzo's from the local area. No. Let's just start picking the best players, right? Like, why are we trying to be all hometown with everything when it doesn't work? It hasn't worked for, like, 7 years. I mean, funny enough, like, I saw someone make this joke. Well, actually, I'm going to make the joke. I saw them bring this up, but I'm going to make the joke. The Orlando Magic have made the playoffs more than Magic Johnson did with the Lakers. Like, one playoff appearance. Like, what are we doing? Like, it's since the Dwight Howard trade. The Magic have made the playoffs more than the Lakers. Let that sink in. So, and they suck. So, I'm just saying, the Magic have sucked for like 7 years, and they somehow made the playoffs. But Yeah, I just almost think so. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with me? They almost have to just go and hire the best basketball people and stop caring. Like, I don't want to see Kurt Rambis. I'm seeing
not
this
at all.
already happen.
Not at all.
I want to just see the best coach possible, the best president possible, and the best GM possible, and enough with this whole like Lakers loyalty thing.
Right, no, and listen, this happens in all sports, and I'm going to stay in LA with this. Lynn Swann, when he got the athletic director position with USC, he got that position, once again, just like Rob Pelinka, never having any experience in that position. He got it because he's a former USC great and a Hall of Famer, right? Same thing with the Lakers. A lot of times, they get sucked into bringing back their former guys when maybe they're not necessarily fit for the position, but it's just, hey, this is a name brand, a former face of this organization, and we want to show them love. That's great. You can show them love by getting them some courtside seats or, like, I don't know, doing something else. But you don't necessarily have to put them into your front office and give them the power to make decisions about your team. So, yes, if I'm the Lakers, I'm looking at I'm sorry, not Luke Walton. I'm looking at Tyronn Lue. And that's because he formerly coached LeBron James, and they have a good relationship.
That could work.
And because they won a championship. I'm also looking at Mark Jackson, who's the now ESPN and ABC analyst, former head coach of the Warriors, who started the elevation of that team, and then Steve Kerr really took them over the top. So those would be the first two head coaching candidates that I would seriously look at if I were Jeannie Buss and Rob Pelinka, if you are really looking to fire Luke Walton. I just read a quote that Luke Walton was actually in the exit meetings with the team. So he's obviously in the building and he's still around the team. There hasn't been any breaking news as of right now. I keep refreshing ESPN. So he has Luke Walton has not been fired yet. The Lakers, I believe, did they finish their...
Here's my thing. No, I think they're still going on. Here's my thing with Luke Walton. I actually don't even mind if Luke Walton is head coach. It's just that we need to stop with the whole, like, putting all this pressure on him, right? Like, when he was with the Warriors, there was no pressure on him, and he did great, right? Because he just had a lot of talent, and they just do what you got to do and let the talent do it. If they just let Luke Walton do his job, I don't really care if he's coach. I also don't care if he's not coach. We just need to hire the best possible people.
Right.
Because I'm done and I'm sick of this stupid, like, Showtime stuff that doesn't work. We're not in the 80s. There's not 16 teams or whatever there were back then. There's 30 teams. There's one dominant one. And there's a lot of teams in the West, including the one that plays in the same arena, that are moving up and have better chances of getting these stars.
Exactly.
So, you know, it's just crazy. Is there anything else we want to add on the Lakers, or do we want to just talk real quickly about Dirk and Wade? Because I don't know if we'll have time later in the segment.
Yeah, no, we need to talk about them and give them their respect.
Yeah, so do we want to talk about that later in the show, or do we want to talk about that? Because we're at 29 minutes right now.
You know what? We got to give them their proper due. So let's hold off right now.
Absolutely, no problem.
We'll go to break. We'll come back with Do You Care? And towards the end of the show, we will talk about Dwayne and Dirk, both putting up 30 points.
Awesome.
In their last home games.
Yeah, not
for
60
their respective
like
teams.
Kobe.
Not 60.
I'm just saying.
60 as a whole.
Yeah.
But 30 separate. But just amazing games for both of those guys. So yes, we will talk about that at the end of the show.
Yeah, and then so Do You Care? We got a lot. We got a big golf tournament going on that I just remembered was happening. We have a big Cowboys extension to talk about, and playoffs start. A lot to talk about in Do You Care? So stay tuned, and then stay tuned until later. NBA playoffs talk. We don't know exactly what the matches are going to be, but we definitely we know the 17 teams that have a chance. We're going to get into Wade and Nowitzki, and I'm also going to tell the story of after WrestleMania, what happened with the transportation and stuff like that, which you do not want to miss because a lot of people don't know what happened. So stay tuned. This is the Cover 2 podcast right now on the TuneIn app and on OC Rock Radio. And quickly after this break, we'll be back on Facebook Live. We'll be right back.
I want my players, my fan base to buy into winning. If I can convey anything to you, I got a chance to talk with Coach Kelly. You know, I've always been jealous of football coaches because their defensive players don't worry about offense. The linemen don't worry about how many shots they get. You know, football is a great sport. It's such an easy sport. You got 85 guys. I mean, it's a layup.
Washington Capitals, for the first time in their 44-year history, are the Stanley Cup champions.
Pretty tough feeling. pretty emotional, almost sick to your stomach with how close you get and how hard you work to get here, and then to not get it done. Only 2 teams make it this far, but when you never know when you're going to get this opportunity again, and you let it slip through your fingers, the only real thing you have on your mind is that you didn't get the job done.
Welcome back to the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio and Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us again. Once again, I'm Jared Smith.
And I'm Nick Nina.
And we are here for our favorite segment of the show. I'm not going to make Nick do
it
because I want to have him keep his voice.
I can't do it.
But it's time for Do You Care? We've got a lot of different topics to talk about today. A little golf, some hockey, baseball, basketball, a little bit of everything going on. So we're going to jump right into it. Nick, you're going to get the first question for today. Do you care that the Masters gets underway starting tomorrow?
Yes, I do care, Jared, because, the big golf tournaments I'm always excited to see because they mean so much to the sport of golf. And winning these tournaments is so difficult. And it's crazy still to me that they play at this course every single year. And, like, the same guys don't win every year. Like, you have different guys win every year, even though everyone knows the course. So I really love the Masters, probably more than even a lot of other tournaments. And the scoring isn't, like, super low like the U.S. Open and stuff like that, too. So, I really like it. I know the favorite right now is Rory McIlroy, and then they always give the sympathy favoritism to Tiger Woods for some reason, even though the guy hasn't done, like, anything for years. So if you're looking to bet on the Masters, you want to look at the guys that have done well in the past, obviously, because it's the same course every year. And you want to, a lot of times, older guys, I'm not saying Tiger Woods, but older veteran golfers have a better chance at doing well at these events because they know the course and they've seen the course so many times. A lot of times the younger guys that are doing well, say like a Jordan Spieth and stuff like that, sometimes they end up not playing as well because the moment is overwhelming because there's so many celebrities at this thing, and it's just it's what some say is golf's biggest tournament. So if you're looking to bet, go on those kind of guys. I know I'm probably going to bet McIlroy because I feel like he's done well recently and he's back to kind of his self. So just to give you a little tip right there. And if I'm wrong about that, don't at me. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm excited about the Masters, and I'm always down for the big 4 or 5, however, if you want to add the Players' Championship into it, the big tournaments in golf. Jared, do you care that Luis Severino is out for another 6 weeks with a lat strain?
I do care, and this one is a lot bigger blow than I think a lot of Yankees fans anticipated in the beginning. Now, obviously, he was dealing with shoulder inflammation in spring training, but this lat strain was not revealed in the MRI. And I think some people in the Yankees office are thinking that the shoulder inflammation is what led to this lat strain. So he's actually going to be out for at least 6 more weeks. And I think the Yankees are trying to be as cautious as possible. So they say 6 weeks, but it actually could potentially be even longer. Now, the problem is their reliever, Jonathan, I'm not even going to try to say his last name. It's Luisiga.
I shouldn't even try to say it.
Yeah.
Luisiga or something.
Luisiga.
Alex, help us out,
right.
please.
He actually started off really hot. He was 2-0 on his first 2 games, and then he kind of got roughed up in his last outing with Houston a little bit. So the Yankees right now, they have an open spot. Now, whether they want to bring up Gio Gonzalez, CC Sabathia potentially coming off the injured list with the back injury. They can potentially make some moves, but the fact that Luis Severino, one of their best players, is not, is going to be out even longer than expected is somewhat of a blow for this team. I think I mentioned this before the season started that if Severino was only out for a short period of time, like a couple weeks or something, I think that's okay because obviously it's just the beginning of the season and you can afford time to make up. But if he's out for 2 months, 3 months, you're getting the majority of the season, at least the first half of the season, I think that's where you can kind of start to worry. And then even when he comes back, it's probably going to take him a couple of games to get himself acclimated and make sure that shoulder's right physically and even just from a mental standpoint. So not great news for the Yankees, obviously, and hopefully this is just a 6-week injury and not an injury that kind of prolongs him for the rest of the year. Nick, do you care that the Stanley Cup playoffs get started today?
You know what's funny? I don't. And that's just because both the teams that I follow, the Anaheim Ducks and the Los Angeles Kings, weren't even close to making the playoffs this year. And I've said this in the past. I think the Tampa Bay Lightning just need to win the Stanley Cup Finals because they had so many more points than everybody else in the league. It would be kind of a disaster, since they've also been successful and have been to Stanley Cup Finals in the past, for them not to make it. For this year, I kind of want to see a team that hasn't done well or hasn't made the Stanley Cup Finals get there. I've mentioned Nashville. I've mentioned Winnipeg. The Carolina Hurricanes are a great story of this year. So I'm looking for some upsets, but I'll probably be watching the Stanley Cup playoffs from a distance. And I'll probably watch the Stanley Cup Finals. But no, I'm not that interested in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year just because of bias reasons and because none of the teams I favor or like are even in the playoffs. So, no, not super excited about them starting today. Jared, do you care that Chris Mullen is leaving as head coach at St. John's University?
I don't care. And this is almost like piggybacking off what we've been talking about this entire show about how, you know, the Lakers brought in Magic Johnson and how the Lakers are known for bringing in former players who, you know, have the face in the spotlight but don't necessarily have the resume to pretend, you know, actually get the job or deserve the job. Same thing with Lynn Swann at USC. And I feel like with Chris Mullins and St. John's, it was kind of that same deal. He's not even arguing. He's no doubt the best basketball player to ever come out of that St. John's program. And when he took over in 2015, it was kind of like, oh my gosh, we're bringing our own guy back. This is a whole new regime. Let's go. Well, guess what? In his first 3 seasons, he went 38-60. So that's obviously way below 500. St. John's finally did make the tournament this year, but they stumbled down the stretch and didn't really have a real shot to get anywhere and really make some noise. So, this is another situation where it's kind of just like, oh man, this is one of our guys who didn't pan out. And in today's sport, whether you're talking about college or pro, if you have a small window to improve, and he's had 4+ years, and that, in my opinion, is plenty of time to prove yourself. And obviously, he hasn't done that. So, I'm sure it was very difficult. He had a press conference, and it was not easy for him, especially as being an alum, and he has so much love for that program. But I think he understands that they need to go in a different direction to get St. John's back to where they need to be. Nick, last question for you, and I have a feeling how you're going to feel about this one. Do you care that UCLA finally gets its head coach? Not the first choice, no. Not the second choice, and probably not even the third choice, but they finally got a guy.
Yes, I do care. They hire Cincinnati head coach Mick Cronin. I believe he has some roots to California. I might be wrong on that because there were so many head coaches in the mix. I don't know which one I was reading about. But, no, obviously Cincinnati's been a very good team in college basketball the last couple of years. So I'm excited at what they bring. Mick Cronin is a great defensive coach. We've been talking about that all podcast. The 2 championship teams were both very defensive teams. So how could you not be down for that? We always talk about defense wins championships. So, and the thing about UCLA is, too, they actually have even though they were somewhat horrible this year, they actually have a lot coming in next year. Sharif O'Neal, who was supposed to be their top guy at Shaq's son,
right?
He's kind of coming in this year because he missed last year. They have 2 great recruits. One that goes to my brother's high school are coming in, and they're some of the top players in the country. They're going to have people stay and stuff like that, too. So UCLA, right now might be potentially the best team in the Pac-12 with this new roster coming in. I know, Jared, you're looking at me like that, but you look at with the defensive prowess and how good Washington was with their defense in the Pac-12 and the kind of diminished rosters with the rest of the conference, I think UCLA you could slot right in there to probably making a bowl game.
It's okay. I'm gonna give you a tournament pass on that one.
They're partying a lot this weekend. A tournament game, and they likely could also win the Pac-12. So early predictions again, but I really like this hire. I know they, wanted Calipari. That probably wasn't going to happen. And Rick Barnes of Tennessee and TCU's Jamie Dixon ended up turning down the jobs. I think this Mick Cronin, after getting him as fourth choice, I love it. That's great to me. So no problem with that. And a lot of people have been making comparisons to how the USC didn't hire Pete Carroll. He wasn't their first choice, and obviously we know what ended up happening with that. So
fair.
Yeah. So
Fair.
It's a different sport, but if you're a UCLA fan, I would be excited about the future in both the basketball and the football ranks, and the baseball team's number one in the nation, too. So, good for UCLA. All right, Jerry, last question for you, and I know you're going to like this one. Do you care that DeMarcus Lawrence has signed an extension with the Dallas Cowboys?
Officially signed. I know we kind of talked about this a little bit last show, but he officially signed his deal. 5 years, $105 million. It's technically an extension, so he's going to get a total of like $31 million this year alone.
Wow.
And he is only behind, I believe, Von Miller and I believe Khalil Mack as actual edge rushers when it comes to paydays. So, yeah, he definitely got paid, and now it's about getting Lawrence into surgery and having that shoulder surgery, which I believe he might be having today, actually.
I think he is having today.
It's like a 4 to 5 month recovery process, and that was one of the issues that was holding up this deal. The Cowboys were saying, listen, we want to keep you. You're a homegrown player. We want to pay you, but we also want you to have your surgery knowing it's going to be somewhat of a recovery time because we want you on the field week 1. Like, if we're going to be giving you this type of extension,
I totally agree with
you need to be on the
yeah.
field week 1, and I think that's where some kind of hesitation was there for Lawrence saying, I want my money first, kind of going back and forth. Apparently, Stephen Jones, the COO of the Dallas Cowboys, the son of Jerry Jones, had a lengthy conversation with DeMarcus Lawrence last Thursday, and that was what people were saying, like a come-to-Jesus moment where both sides kind of hashed it out and said, hey, listen, let's get this done. Let's put all the semantics and everything aside. We want you on this team. We want to pay you. We just want you to have your surgery. So I believe, I will double-check and confirm it, but I'm almost certain he's having the surgery today, and he probably will be out for most of the team activities throughout the summer, but plan is to have him on that field week 1 as the starting defensive end, new $100 million man for the Dallas Cowboys. So, yes, I'm very excited. And really just very quickly about this Dallas Cowboys team, it's still early and there's obviously a lot of optimism, but I haven't been this excited about this Cowboys team in a long time. The talent that they have on their roster already now, we know they don't have a first-round pick because they traded that for Amari Cooper, but the talent, the young talent that this team has, I'm very excited for this team going forward, and I think in the next couple years they're really going to be contenders and a legit opportunity to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, they're going to be really good, and it's smart that they're starting to lock up all their guys. Now, obviously, you have Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper later down the line. But yeah, Cowboys, I mean, looking at it right now, besides the Eagles, they're really like that top team.
Yeah,
so,
no, the Cowboys like to draft well and take care of their own. They're not necessarily big free agent players. They're not going to go out and give free agent $100 million. They want to pay their own guys and develop their own guys. And they say they're going to get Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott and Byron. They're going to get all those guys done. They say they can get them done right now if they really wanted to. They're probably going to space it out a little bit, but they have a plan in place as far as getting their own guys taken care of. And if they can do that, I think this team will be successful for the years to come.
Yeah,
so
super excited.
That was a great "Do You Care" segment. A lot of diversity, or a lot of interesting questions going on, and a lot of multiple topics. So we're going to end this segment and finish off the last segment of the show with some more NBA talk, as the NBA playoffs are nearing, and I believe they start this Saturday. It's not 100% certain, but we can basically get a clearer picture of the seeds and where everyone's going to be. Nick already mentioned that more than likely the Clippers could be playing the Warriors as a 1-8 matchup.
Ooh.
Not a good thing for the Clippers, but coming back on the other side of the break, NBA basketball talk and a little bit of Nick's thoughts and reaction from his New York trip.
Yes.
Wow. I'm a little overwhelmed, as you would think. Amazing that my heroes came out here for this game. So thank you guys so much. Love you guys. Grew up watching you and idolizing you guys. So this means more than you'll ever know. Mark, can't wait to see what you got for my jersey retirement. I mean, this is a high bar you set.
Miami and Dallas, like, they both had their final home games, but they still have their actual final games today.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really pulling for Miami, man. I want to see them, for Dwayne Wade's sake, I really want to see them get in.
I actually think they were eliminated last night.
Were they?
I don't think they have a chance anymore.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I thank you guys for dancing with me this year. I thank you guys for y'all patience this year. I thank y'all for y'all generosity this year, man. I thank y'all for y'all support. I thank y'all for y'all love. I thank y'all for having my back, brothers, man. So as this season's been about me, I've enjoyed this season with you guys, man. I got some brothers that will always be my brothers. I love you guys, man. All right? Heat Nation, thank you. Love you guys.
Welcome back to the Cover 2 podcast on Facebook Live and OC Rock Radio. Thank you for joining us once again. It is the final segment of the show, and we're going all NBA. The NBA playoffs officially start on Saturday. Today is the final day of regular season games. You have about a little more than half the league playing in games today, and there's still a few playoff spots that need to be determined. Some teams are already locked into their spots, but there could be some changes depending on how tonight's games go. So we're going to quickly kind of go over the East, because the East is a little more settled, and then we're going to get to the Western Conference where things can be shaken up a little bit more. So let's start with the East first. You have Milwaukee and Toronto, who are locked into the number 1 and number 2 seeds for sure. And then you have Philadelphia currently right now in the number 3 spot, and you have the Boston Celtics currently in the number 4 spot. So those will be the 4 home court advantage teams as of right now. And then Pacers, Nets, Magic, 5, 6, 7. You have 2 teams fighting for the 8th spot. You got Detroit Pistons and the Charlotte Hornets. Detroit currently has that 8th spot because
if Detroit wins, they're in.
Right, because they're game ahead. So, Nick, I want to get your thoughts on this right now. I want to get your thoughts on the Pistons and then the Hornets, who you think will take that 8th seed, and then where you see the rest of these teams kind of falling in line.
Let me just look up who those teams are playing right now, unless you have the schedule up right now.
Yeah, I can pull that up right now. So
Detroit's at the Knicks, so they're in the playoffs. All right, so just might as well put the Pistons at the they're playing the Knicks, so I mean, if they lose, they obviously don't deserve to make playoffs. It's poor for Charlotte, obviously, because they.
Yeah, well, Charlotte's got Orlando, and that's a tough one too. But the thing is, they don't control their own destiny. Yeah,
well, but Orlando will try, because, like I said, if Orlando wins and the Nets lose, Orlando's 6th seed. So right now, if the Nets win, Nets are the 6th seed. But so Orlando will try in that game, whereas Detroit, they're playing the Knicks. And I won't say, I was making fun of them to New Yorkers in New York. So that's how much I think the Knicks suck.
Wow.
So, So, probably the Pistons are in just based on the fact that they're playing that opponent. I don't know what the Hornets have to do to make the playoffs, man. This is another example. Michael Jordan, he hasn't been too successful really at what he's done either.
Right.
We talk about Magic Johnson all podcast. Michael Jordan has not got this Hornets team to any level of success since he's been there, and they even changed their name and stuff. So that's super surprising. But for me, with this Eastern Conference playoffs, it's kind of like we mentioned the top 5 teams: Bucks, Raptors, 76ers, Celtics, and Pacers are in that order. I really think those are the only 5 teams that have a chance to advance into the second round. I think the only one where I really don't know who's going to win is Celtics and Pacers. But like the Bucks, Raptors, and 76ers, they're not losing to the Nets and the Magic and Pistons. It's just not happening unless there's a big injury. But those teams are just too stacked, and I just don't see them losing. So do you have any other thoughts on the Eastern Conference? I pretty much, like I said, one of those 5 teams, or 4 of those 5 teams is making the second round, and I don't see any other teams possibly making it.
No, I agree, and there's not. I mean, obviously we can sit here and debate that, but there's really not much more to go on that. I think the East is, how should we say, a little more clear cut than the West, and
which isn't good because you want to see.
You want to see a little more parity. You want to see some excitement, and not that there could be upsets, but. If these teams stay healthy, you're really looking at the top teams as being the elite and advancing more than likely to the second round and on. So I don't see these top teams in the East doing much of anything, unfortunately.
No, exactly. And you look at, cool things to look at. You know, Magic haven't been in the playoffs for a long time, so that crowd will be super hyped for them to be in.
Right.
Obviously, you have some great hometown advantages with Toronto and Philly and Boston, and you might see a New York-Philly matchup with the Nets and 76ers, so that will be cool. But, like, those, you know, we said those teams are going to win in the top. So, you know, we'll move on to the West here and kind of dive into this. So the Western Conference right now, it's looking like the Warriors are locked for sure in 1 seed. I believe the Nuggets are locked into the 2 seed because I'm saying that because I think they're probably going to beat the Timberwolves tonight. I don't see them losing to them, so they'll get 2 seed. Rockets and Blazers are 3rd or 4th seed, but they still will have the home field advantages. The Jazz are locked into the 5th seed. They can't move. And the Thunder, Jazz, and Clippers...
Spurs and Clippers.
My bad. Spurs and Clippers all still have a chance to be 6th, 7th, or 8th seed. So that's huge. So, you know, what we're looking at is who wants to play the Blazers? Because we've been telling this, right? The Blazers have one guy right now, and that's Damian Lillard. They lost Nurkic. McCollum has been injured. He's not going to be 100% even if he does come back. And I just think that, like, if you have the potential to, if the Blazers win and the Rockets lose tonight, and you have the Blazers as that 3rd seed, oh my goodness, you want to be the 6th seed so bad, because not only are you not going to have to play a super tough team in the first round, but you're not going to play the Warriors in the second round either.
Right.
So this is huge. And then you have the Rockets potentially playing the Warriors in the second round. And that eliminates one of the really good teams. So you have a very good chance at getting to the Western Conference Finals, and then you never know. You know, you don't know what happens, and you might actually end up getting into the NBA Finals, and the Western Conference is better than the Eastern Conference. So this is really, really exciting basketball tonight. Unfortunately, when the podcast comes out later tonight, most of these games will be going on, so we're not going to talk about the specific games, but, you know, what do we see happening here with the West? Who do we think are legitimate contenders? What do we think... what do we think has a legitimate chance? I know we talked about this like 2 weeks ago, but now moving on, seeing what's happened, who do we think has a chance to get to the Western Conference Finals? Besides the Warriors,
there's only one other team, and it's the Houston Rockets.
You think the Nuggets have no chance?
No chance. Not in a 7.
See, I disagree with you there.
Not in a 7 game series.
I disagree with you there.
Not in a 7-game series.
Yeah, because the Nuggets are so good at home.
Nah, 1 or 2 games maybe.
Altitude.
Not in a 7-game series. Okay. Listen, the only argument is Steph Curry actually went down with somewhat of an ankle injury yesterday, and they're not calling it
so much for the Warriors.
They're not calling it an ankle sprain. They're saying he's totally fine. They're saying he might even play tonight a little bit. But that's something to watch for. He's had 5 different ankle injuries since he's been in the league, and this was another right ankle injury. So I think that's something to keep an eye on as a potential lingering injury that could go on for the playoffs. But if he's fine, if he comes out and he's healthy and it was nothing, I really think the only other team that can challenge the Warriors in a 7-game series is the Houston Rockets, and that's because they've done it before. The Denver Nuggets, I like them. I'm not discrediting them at all. They deserve to be the number 2 seed, and yes, they do play great at home. But I'm sorry, in a full 7-game series, I don't think their talent and their star power matches with the Warriors at all. Not to mention the fact that they've never been in this position before, and the Warriors are doing it for, it seems like, the millionth time. So I just don't see anything that really points to Denver's way other than them playing well at home. But if they played the Warriors, they wouldn't have home court advantage. So I think that just kills that right there. So
well, I'm saying to get to the Western Conference, because I think we both agree, if we had to bet and our life was on the line, we're not going against the Golden State Warriors, at least out of the West, right? No. We might not even go against them for the NBA Finals pick. But to say that they have no chance of beating the Rockets, I just disagree with that, because they will have the home field advantage as long as they don't blow it tonight. And they'll have the home field advantage against a Houston Rockets team that would be traveling to altitude to play that series. So now maybe if Houston plays the Jazz in the first round and stuff like that. Well, but so I just think that altitude factor and how good Denver has been at home, I just think to say they have no chance, I just agree with that because I think this Nuggets team has been great, although they've lost a lot more games down the stretch, and at one point they lost 4 in a row. I just think Houston's great, but they definitely still have deficiencies on defense, and Denver has a lot better defense than they do.
True. Okay. So, you know what I hope, and I don't want to get into the games that are going on tonight. Yeah. I hope everything stays the way it is now. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm looking at the 1 through 8 seeds in the matchups right now. We would have Golden State playing the Clippers. I love it.
I don't want that, Jared.
Come on. I understand as a Clippers fan, the Clippers would not, but just like the history, and I understand that Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, those guys aren't there anymore, but it's just the history, and that was a rivalry for a couple years. That was huge.
The only reason that I would look forward to this series is because I legitimately think Patrick Beverley would start fights with guys.
Oh, of course he would. Him and Draymond Green?
Oh, dude, it's on.
All day.
And you're putting Beverley on Steph, and he's going to step on his ankle and stuff like that. Right. It's just like, that's exciting. Montrezl Harrell is a very fiery player.
Yeah,
Doc Rivers, he's beaten him in a series before. I know it's not the same team, but he has beaten this group of guys in a 7-game series before, in a Game 7. So with the Clippers, with me, I think you never know against the Warriors because if I'm not mistaken, they haven't played them in the playoffs since that matchup. Right. So you can technically say that the Clippers have never lost to this. So
you have to have the optimists.
They're going to lose the series.
Right
okay,
now
I'm not.
Nick.
No.
It's okay.
They're going to lose the series, which is why I really want them to at least get 7 seed, because if you have to play the Nuggets or Rockets or whatever it ends up being, you have a chance. Whereas I think against the Warriors, you really don't. And besides maybe knocking one of their players out with, whatever, suspension, stuff like that in a series, you're not going to win the series. You might take games away from them, and it might make stars think, oh, well, this team went 6 games with the Warriors or whatever. We want to go there to L.A. because we're not going to that crazy show that the Lakers have over there in L.A. Let's go to the Clippers. They seem like if they played against the Warriors and played them tough, what would they have done if they didn't have to play the Warriors in the first round? So that's where you are if you're a Clippers fan, looking at these series saying, let's at least put a great effort in there so that maybe free agents come.
Right.
That's your only silver lining. But, yeah, so then if you look at it, you got Spurs and Nuggets, which I think, that's a great series, and you never know with the Spurs because they have Greg Popovich.
As long as Pop is still there, you really don't. And they have a young team, as well as the Denver Nuggets do. But with Popovich, I would not discredit the Spurs.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see overall with the Spurs how DeMar DeRozan does in the playoffs, because he kind of has been a failure in the playoffs the last couple of years, and it's one of the reasons the Toronto Raptors moved on to Kawhi Leonard from him, even though he was kind of their homegrown guy. So it should be interesting to see with the new coaching staff and with the Spurs how well DeMar DeRozan does as well, also with that mix of LaMarcus Aldridge too.
Right.
Then you'd have Thunder Rockets, which just
that would be the best series to me.
Yeah,
I'm tuning into every single game.
Amazing.
It's up and down. There's just going to be 3-pointers all over the place.
Russell Westbrook
and Harden,
Paul George,
and you know how fiery. Give me that matchup.
Yeah,
please give me that.
And then you'd have Blazers and Jazz, which would be exciting, and you'd have one of those teams move into the conference the conference semifinals, which would be exciting for those.
That really is all on Damian Lillard.
Yeah,
right. Because
it'd be great if you were able to win.
They lost McCollum. They lost one of their other stars. I mean, Damian Lillard would have to go off, in my opinion, in order for the Blazers to win really any series, whether they're playing the Utah Jazz or whether they are playing another team. I think this is all on Lillard's shoulders. And I'm not saying that he can't do it because he is great and he's underrated because he plays in a smaller market. But it would be a tall order for that Portland Trailblazers team to win a series, even though as of right now they've got home court, and regardless they're going to have home court. I don't know with the injuries and the deficiencies that they have if they can win a series.
So looking back at the whole playoff scheme, because the playoffs will start before our next podcast, so we don't want to predict anything because we don't even know what literally the Warriors could be. The 1-8 matchup could be different. The 2-7 matchup could be different. The 3-6 matchup could be different, and the 4-5 matchup could be different in the West. So we cannot predict. We're not going to do that because it'd be stupid if we're wrong, and to predict that. And With the Eastern Conference, it's a little easier to predict, so I want to jump into the Eastern Conference. What would be your favorite matchup overall in the playoffs to potentially see? What would you be looking at with a playoff series to where I want to see those two teams play each other? I want to see that matchup, whether it be in the Western Conference semifinals, the Western Conference finals, or a matchup that's going on in the first round.
I
know which one I'm going to say.
It has to go with the Sixers because I think they're the most volatile team.
Yep.
With Joel Embiid, with all the talent that team has, but the fact that they've, I don't want to say underachieved because obviously they're the number 3 seed and they're going to have home court, but it's like they just 50-31. You would think they would have been like 58 and 20. I don't know. I just
they had a lot of influx because they had 2 stars traded to their team this year too.
Right. So I get new surroundings. I get it. It's actually 2. I'm going to give you 2 because I don't know if I can pick between one. The first one, and this is the more obvious one for me, is the Sixers and the Celtics. And I know that wouldn't happen until like
it could happen.
The fact that it's Boston and Philly, Kyrie Irving and the kind of mess that's going on with Boston right now, how they were in the tank and I wasn't really, who knows what's going to happen with them. It's like 1 minute they're not playing as a team and they have a kumbaya moment as they're going to Golden State and they whip on Golden State. So it's like you never know what you're going to get from Boston. And then
the Lakers also whipped on Golden State.
Right. Okay. But I would just really like to see Philly and Boston. I think that would be a great kind of hard-nosed matchup, like an old school basketball matchup. And the other one would be Philly and Milwaukee, right? Yeah. With the Greek Freak. I feel like it would be his moment to kind of shine and say, yeah, I have good players. I have Chris Middleton. I have other guys on my team. But, like, I'm leading this here right now. I'm going to go through Boston. I'm going to go through Philly and all those players, right? So it would be either Philly and Boston or Philly and what I would never thought I would ever say, Milwaukee.
Yeah, mine clearly in the East is Bucks and 76ers, singularly because they played dodgeball the other night and Bledsoe threw a 90-mile-an-hour ball at Embiid's chest. I was watching the game while I was packing for New York, and I had seen the fight on Twitter, but when you watched it live, to see that happen just like early in the game in the first 3 minutes was crazy to me. And obviously Bledsoe got thrown out, which I don't think should happen. I mean, Embiid threw the ball at him first. Give him both tacks. You're allowed to retaliate, okay? But I just think you're right. Embiid, Butler, J.J. Redick, and Antetokounmpo with his fire, and then you got throw Eric Bledsoe in the mix. That is a series I want to see. Some just studs.
Yeah, and it's all brewing. It's not like this happened at the beginning of the year. Or even
last week.
This is all right now fresh.
No, exactly.
Right. So that's another series that wouldn't happen until probably like the third round. It would have to be like
it would have to be
conference
finals. Yeah.
Right.
But they could happen. I think that could happen. They could beat the Raptors. And then so in the Western Conference, what's your ideal matchup? Is it Thunder Rockets? Is that actually the series that entices you the most, or what's another series that going along?
So I'm going to give you 2 again. I'm indecisive today. I'm really sorry, but I'm going to give you 2. The first one, it would be that first round matchup. Potentially between the Rockets and the Thunder, and I don't have to mention it again, but I will. It's because the fact that Russell Westbrook and James Harden have a history. They used to play together. It's not the Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook where there's some beef, but it's still a very enticing matchup, and I think it'd be very up and down, fast-paced game, a lot of excitement. And the other one would this is kind of even more of the obvious one, would be the Rockets and the Warriors, and that's because I think those are in my opinion the 2 best teams in the West. Even though, as of right now, the Rockets are sitting as the 3rd seed. I think, like I said, and I will harp on it again, the Rockets have the best opportunity in the West to defeat the Warriors and take over as the top spot. So I would love to see that in the Western Conference Finals. And I would love to see that Rockets-Thunder matchup in the first round.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I actually believe the Rockets have the best chance to beat the Warriors. But what I was trying to say earlier is to say they're just going to beat the Nuggets outright no matter what.
Well, I almost forgot that you were talking about the Rockets and the Nuggets. I thought you were talking about like the Warriors and the Nuggets.
No,
that's why.
No.
Okay, when you're talking about the Rockets and the Rockets,
there's
and the
a
Nuggets,
chance.
Then slightly more chance.
So my game, again, not going to extend on it because I think Rockets Warriors obviously would be a great thing. And I think Thunder Rockets would be great too. My low-key game, and I want to see this and I don't want to see this just because certain things happen, Thunder Jazz. because of what happened with Russell Westbrook and those fans and stuff like that.
Yep.
To see that series happen a little later in the playoffs with things on the line, to see if Russell Westbrook could handle himself under that pressure, because obviously those fans, what they're doing is inexcusable. But to see that atmosphere and to see what happens with that series would be very, very interesting.
Oh, I'd love to see Westbrook go in there and hit a game-winning three,
go 60 points,
and then just ice him.
Yeah.
I'd
60
love to
points,
see that.
and then the Utah Jazz fans go to do whatever they do in Utah after.
Yeah,
right?
I'd love to see him go.
So,
that would be great.
That would be low key. People don't think that's. I mean, that series would have to happen later down. It will happen in the first round, obviously, but that'd be very underrated series with what's happening, especially those games in Utah, to see if Russell Westbrook can not only handle himself, but just give it back to those fans for the things they were saying to him and stuff like that. So, we got 10 minutes left, or a little over 10 minutes left, so we definitely have time to do the same things. So, do you want me to tell the story, or you want to go over Wade and Nowitzki?
Let's go over Wade and Nowitzki,
okay, I'll
and
finish
we'll finish with the Nick New York story. So, let's start with Dwayne Wade first. He finished, and he had his last home game yesterday, as well as Dirk. Like I mentioned, both Miami Heat and the Dallas Mavericks are actually playing their actual final regular season games tonight, but they're on the road. So they kind of got their farewell send-offs at home last night, and they both balled out. They both scored 30 points. They're both going to be, hopefully, first ballot Hall of Famers, I think, no doubt about it. Dirk Nowitzki played his entire career with Dallas. Dwayne Wade had a small stint, less than a year in Chicago, where he's from, and he had said that he always wanted to play in Chicago, and he got that opportunity, but it didn't pan out. That Bulls team has just been horrific.
Yeah.
And then he had, I think, like it was 3 months with the Cavaliers and LeBron James last year in Cleveland, where they wanted to pair together again, and that didn't work out either. So he got to come back home to Miami and get that farewell tour in a sense, and I think he's been nothing but spectacular. You got Wade County. When you think of Dwayne Wade, you think of him in a Miami Heat uniform. You don't think of him in any other uniform. So the fact that he got to go out like he did, it was actually funny when he was doing his farewell speech. He's like, I only have one way to do this, and it's when he goes and jumps on the scorer's table and kind of puts his arms out. And the first attempt, he actually missed. he could. I don't know, man.
I missed that.
He's getting a little long in the tooth, and so he jumped up and he slipped.
Time to retire.
He slipped and he landed, and he's like, "Oh, that was awful. Let's try that again." But it was really cool. Obviously, it was a packed crowd. I will say, I'm not trying to throw shade at Miami fans, but they don't really pack that arena a lot unless it's the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw it when LeBron was there, but they really don't. And it was cool to see that crowd or that arena fully packed and come out and support
he's
Dwayne.
The best Heat player ever.
Right. No, it was. It's great that they did come out and it wasn't like a half-empty arena like it typically is. So, a great home send-off for Dwayne Wade. Like I mentioned, 30 points in his final game. Any thoughts on Dwayne Wade or anything that kind of comes up to your mind when you?
Dwayne Wade, to me, not only is he a great player, but a great guy. Overall in his career, and obviously he'll continue that, and he might get into broadcasting or something like that. But the guy just has an energy and an ambiance about him that I'd want to hang out with. Right? He's a great dude. He's been in pop culture and stuff like that. If you saw the video that they did for him, where these people were giving him jerseys, it was great, and you just realize how good of a dude he was. And I think I like to harp on that with players a lot when they retire, because obviously you see his stats and he has 3 championships, and one of them that he won, not necessarily by himself, but
Shaq.
But that he was one of the biggest catalysts, and he won that for his city. And I just think he's one of those guys. Although he did leave for Chicago and Cleveland and wasn't super successful, he was a Miami Heat guy, and he came back and did it the right way. And they tried to make the playoffs this year, and they fell 1 game short, which sucks. But I think it's almost better that he gets to retire and gets that game to focus on. He doesn't have to focus on the playoffs a little later, and that his last game isn't a lot. Did they win or lose last night? I actually don't know.
I believe they lost. I'll have to double check.
So hopefully tonight, and here's what the cool thing. So they're at Brooklyn in New York, so that's kind of cool that he gets to play his last game in New York. But his
Oh, they won.
Okay, so they won. So his last game is in Miami. He won. I almost. I know he'll probably play, but I really hope that he goes out on the winning streak, because Miami, the Heat, they would have gone out with a loss.
Right.
Miami wasn't going to win the finals this year, so they would have ended their season with a loss. So it'd be nice either if Wade doesn't play tonight or if they play tonight and they win, for him to get a win and know that that's the last cool thing he does. So that'd be really good. And, continued success for Dwayne Wade in his
he's got his own wine company, clothing company. He's married to Gabrielle Union. Dwayne Wade's gonna be all right.
He's best friends with LeBron James.
He's gonna be all right.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
Right. Don't worry.
Just don't hire him as the
Dwayne.
GM or head coach of the Lakers. Just anything but that.
Geez.
All right, Dirk Nowitzki. Just another legend. A guy that has played with the Dallas Mavericks for his entire career. One of the best big men of all time. 2 NBA Finals wins, which some would say probably should have never happened. Like, to think that he could have won 2 finals with the teams he had is still pretty unbelievable to me. He beat the Heat team, excuse me, he beat the Heat team. So, just an amazing accomplishment. Obviously, I forget what he is in scoring, but he's way up there in the stats, even better than Dwayne Wade. So, for Dirk, he's been another great dude. Nobody doesn't have respect for him. I loved when Doc Rivers, during the Clippers game earlier this year, got on the mic and called timeout for him and had the entire Staples Center crowd. The guy deserves it. He's exactly like Wade.
Right.
And now they're just Hall of Famer. Although both those guys weren't really the catalysts and stars of their teams, and they can't really fully commit to being players anymore, it still will be interesting not seeing... when you watch Mavericks games, not seeing Dirk. And when you see Heat games, not seeing Dwayne Wade.
Right. No, exactly, yeah. And I think the greatest thing was last night, a couple of Dirk's idols actually made it to the game. Charles Barkley, Scottie Pippen, Detlef Schrempf, Sean Kemp.
Awesome.
They all came out and they all spoke after the game right before Dirk took the mic and kind of gave his farewell speech. The Dallas Cowboys have, like, Jerry Jones and like 20 of the players were in a suite there.
That's so cool.
I mean, it was like everyone came out for Dirk last night, and it was really awesome. And you like I said, it's just he came out and said, I came over from Germany over 20 years ago, but now I'm a Texan. You know what I mean? He's just been embraced by that culture, and it's really awesome to see him, just like Kobe and some other players who get to spend their entire careers with one organization. And, whether he rides off into the sunset, whether he stays on as an ambassador or something like that, hopefully he does well. But it was just fantastic to see him go out and, like I said, score 30 points. You know what I mean? It's like, it's one thing to go out and you play a couple minutes and then they bring you out and you get a standing ovation. But it's like Dwayne Wade and Dirk, they both came out and like balled out. You know what I mean? They both did well and they both got wins. So side note, Jamal Crawford on the losing end of that team for the Phoenix Suns last night when they played the Mavericks, the oldest player in NBA history to score 50 points. He put up 51 in that game.
51?
Yeah. The Mavericks actually had to
I've been watching too much wrestling, man.
The Mavericks had to put their starters back into the game just to get the W because the Phoenix Suns were actually making a comeback.
They're good for Jamal Crawford, man.
So, a lot of the old guys are showing out.
Let's go.
So I had to give a little love to Jamal Crawford. But Dirk Nowitzki, great player and, a well-deserved send-off. Even though he had said earlier in the year that he didn't want a farewell tour, he more than deserved what he got last night.
Get it fair. When you say that, you're entitled to it.
Yeah. So,
and the cool thing about tonight's games, and you'll probably know when this podcast comes out what's happened. Miami is at Brooklyn, and Brooklyn is fighting for a playoff spot, and Dallas is at San Antonio, and San Antonio. So it'd be nice. These teams can play spoilers, and these games are meaningful, and the crowds will be there not only to see these guys in their last games if they do play, but these games mean something, and it would be. I guarantee these guys will come out and try to win these games, and will not bury the No. So that will be super exciting, and again, credit to these guys for great careers, sticking with their teams for the most part, and giving a city a thing to hope for, and they're also bona fide Hall of Famers. So
exactly.
I'm putting my computer away to tell this next story.
Yeah, the moment we've all been waiting for. The reason why Nick's voice is so hoarse. And but listen, he's a trooper. He made it out today. He did great. But let's get the quick story because we have about 2 minutes and change. Of the New York trip.
No, exactly. So just long story short, with the actual events we went to, WrestleMania 35. Absolutely incredible, exceeded expectations, and all the people I've met in the wrestling business overall in this weekend were great. They were all very nice to questions I asked them. If I asked for a picture for certain reasons, they were more than willing to do that at no cost. What's funny is you usually have to pay these people. I didn't pay a single dime to do any of this. So
That's awesome.
It was awesome. And obviously my homies, the RKJ man, Ryan Johnson, Eric Santos, shout out to them for being such troopers and being so cool on this trip and enjoying it with me in the process. And also some of my friends that I also hung out with and partied with over this weekend were great. The main story I wanted to tell was our story leaving WrestleMania 35. So the event was at MetLife Stadium where the New York Giants and Jets play. And so the event ended at 12:22 at night. For the next hour, we were kind of wasting time waiting for cars to leave the parking lot because we knew it might be hard for Ubers to come in because there were so many people leaving, and we just didn't feel like sitting in a car the whole time. So after the hour went, we kind of moved over to the Uber area, and we started noticing that Ubers not only were super expensive, what we expected, but that they were taking a really long time to get there. It was 25-minute wait, stuff like that. And it was fine because, again, we were trying to waste time, but we noticed these times weren't getting any shorter. And then we noticed that people in the line for the Ubers had been there for 45 minutes and hadn't moved where they were. And so we're kind of getting a little bit nervous. And then we start calling Ubers and Lyfts and nobody's connecting and nobody's connecting to anything.
Stranded.
And then the unthinkable happened and it started pouring rain. And I'm wearing the loosest hood. My friend Eric didn't even have a sweatshirt. RKJ man set himself up good. He had all the stuff, but it was in the 40s. It was miserable. We had to get under a bridge to avoid it. I had to ask a cop about what to do because we didn't know. We had no way. My phone ran out of battery. Ryan's phone ran out of battery.
Wow.
We had to eventually get on a train that just took us to a random train station in New Jersey to where then we would get an Uber. And we're at 11 o'clock, so I don't want to go too much over time. But the event ended at 12:22, and because of all this stuff, we ended up getting back at our hotel at 4 o'clock in the morning. Not even kidding. Some people we talked to the next day, 5:30 in the morning.
Wow.
It's just insane. From what we've heard, it's just a MetLife Stadium issue, and it's not a WrestleMania issue. But man, It was such a great event, but that sucked. It sucked. It's one of the reasons my voice is gone because of just, struggling and honestly being nervous that we were not going to be able to get home. Luckily our flights were later at night, so we didn't have to worry about that. But I thought we were staying up the whole night. I was like, we're staying up the whole night, and we're going to take our flights.
I've actually been to MetLife. I believe it might have been the first year that they were open, and I don't remember having that problem now. We went to a day game, football game, a Jets game.
Well, it's because the thing with wrestling, too, and we are going over time, but the thing with wrestling, too, is everyone stays till the very end.
Right.
So 82,000 people leave, and there was 82,000 people there.
And you guys were smart to say, hey, listen, we'll let the crowd die down, and the crowd never died down. So, wow, that's...
No, exactly. And the other problem was there's no restaurants or nowhere to walk to. If you're in Brooklyn...
Right,
If you're in Brooklyn for all the other events, you can walk down the street at Madison Square Garden. I'm sure there's other stadiums, Angel Stadium, Dodger Stadium. There's places you can walk to avoid.
Right.
This was just... It was utter hell. And it's probably... We'll probably go to Tampa Bay next year for the event and stuff like that. And from what we've heard... It's just the New York issue. It's just the MetLife Stadium issue. So
welcome to New York.
It was great besides that. But it was overall, again, thanks to everybody who talked. Thanks for everybody who gave us advice. And thanks to everybody who enjoyed the thing. And we got to party with George Kittle at the bar on Saturday night.
Hey, so, there you go.
Tight end for the 49ers. So
awesome, man.
Also, I wanted to give a shout out to my friend Gavin, who won in the 4 digits on Virginia winning the championship. On Monday too. He put a bet on them at the beginning of the tournament, and they ended up winning the whole thing. So shout out to him for winning that.
Awesome.
All right, so it's the end of the podcast. Let me just music right here. There you go. You hear it right there, the music to end the podcast. Unfortunately, my voice kind of sucked tonight, so I apologize for that. But
hey, you're a trooper, man. You made it through.
Excited to talk about what happens next. We'll talk about the NBA playoffs. The NFL draft is coming up, on the 25th, so we're getting excited about that. And then anything else, we didn't think Magic would get fired today. So
not at all. We got that. We got hockey playoffs.
Exactly.
We didn't mention this, but Mike Trout went out of the game with a growing strain last night.
After hitting 5 home runs in 4 games.
Right. So we, potentially we'll have some more news on that next week. So stay tuned. A lot more sports talk next week's podcast. But for today, we're signing off. I'm Jared Smith.
And I'm Nick Vina.
And this has been the Cover 2 Podcast.